Hello, my name is Dr. Ashley Anglin. I'm the Director of Research and Strategic Analysis for United for ALICE. And in this video, I'm very excited to give you a tour of our latest United for ALICE Economic Viability Dashboard. This dashboard reveals the economic and community conditions of people living in households below the ALICE threshold. These households are either in poverty or are ALICE, asset limited, income constrained employed, earning above the federal poverty level but less than the cost of basics. With more than 30 new ALICE variables on work, housing, and community supports, this dashboard provides a new way to explore needs and pair them with promising practices, empowering us to develop targeted solutions for households in hardship. So let's take a look at the dashboard together. There are 4 tabs you can use to navigate the ALICE Economic Viability Dashboard: Maps and Data, Location Comparison Tool, Action Planner, and Framework and Variables. Let's start on the Maps and Data tab. On this tab, you can use the buttons to navigate to the different domains of the EVD, including work, housing, community, and gaps. The maps on this page default to the national view, which shows all states on the map and national averages in the charts below the map. From this view, you can select the whole country to see the national average, or you can select one or multiple states. Select one state by clicking the state, or hold Control while selecting additional states. The map will change to reflect the geography that you've selected. To look below the state level, use the state dropdown to first select a state, then use the county and or PUMA dropdowns to select a location within the state. With the full state selected, state averages are shown. You can also use this map to control click to create combinations of multiple PUMAs. PUMAs are census geographies containing no fewer than 100,000 people that allow for meaningful analysis and comparison. In areas where the population is less dense or more rural, PUMAs tend to cover one or more counties. In more densely populated areas or more urban areas, counties and cities are generally split into multiple PUMAs. So take a look at the map to explore and to see which areas are covered by the PUMAs in your community. Variables included in the work domain include full-time workers earning enough for the household survival budget for one adult and one school-age child. And we also have that breakout by race and ethnicity. The most common industries for workers below the ALICE threshold, with the number of workers and average full-time hourly wages. Work schedules in terms of full or part-time. People below the ALICE threshold who are not working but looking for work, also known as unemployed, as well as characteristics of workers below the ALICE threshold, with breakouts by age, educational attainment, and commute time. Hover over any of the elements in the charts to see additional details. Let's scroll up and look at a different domain. I'm going to select housing, and you'll see that the Economic Viability Dashboard repopulates to show the variables in that domain. You can also see that it keeps the same location that you had previously selected until you change it. If you do need to recenter your view, you can hover over the map and click this house icon. Let's go ahead and just select a different state to mix things up. Looking at the map, you can see the key variable for housing. Renter households below the ALICE threshold paying equal to or less than 30% of their income on rent. On the map, you can always hover over the PUMAs within a state or the states within the country to see additional details and the name of that geography. Scrolling below the map, you can see, in addition to the key variable, supporting variables of home ownership for households below the ALICE threshold, the rent to own gap, which is the percentage of households below the ALICE threshold paying greater than or equal to median owner costs. You can also see breakdowns for owner cost burden, and rent burden by race and ethnicity for households below the ALICE threshold. Let's take a look now at community. The community domain provides an overview through a composite score that looks at key variables related to education, technology, transportation, health, and food access. The darker the shading on the map, the higher the composite score, which is better for ALICE. Below the map, you can see the key variables, which is that composite score that includes health insurance rate for the working age population, preschool enrollment, households with high-speed internet, workers commuting 30 minutes or less to work, and grocery stores per 100,000 households. And these are all for households below the ALICE threshold. In addition to that key variable, you can see health insurance rates by race ethnicity, preschool enrollment by race ethnicity, as well as high-speed internet by race ethnicity. Scrolling up, let's take a look at the gap map. The gap map uses an index score for the key variables in each domain to help visualize economic and social conditions for workers and households below the ALICE threshold, and to help make meaningful comparisons across locations. Here you can see the average score for those 3 domains, with higher scores reflecting relatively better conditions for households below the ALICE threshold. With a state selected, you'll see that range within the state. You can also use these drop-down menus for work score, housing score, and community score to filter locations within the state. So for example, you could look at areas where there's above average housing score. So first unselect all, and then select above average. You'll see the map repopulate, highlighting those areas that have above average work scores. Let's add to that places that have above average housing scores. These scores are compared to the national median, which is set to 50. So you can see those comparisons location by location. So here you can have all the places highlighted that, for example, have above average work score and above average housing scores within the state. Use these dropdowns to make different combinations. You can also always use this unfilter button that you see on our dropdowns to remove any filters and go back to your original view. Scrolling below the map, you can see a breakdown for all the PUMAs within your selected state and where they stand in terms of work, housing, and community. So for example, you have in this PUMA a work score that's below average, a housing score that's pretty average, and a community score that's higher than average compared to that national score. You can also make the gap map populate states by selecting US. With US selected, you'll have every state in that same range, as well as the ability to look at where states compare to one another. In these columns, you can use the filter icon for each domain to rank the different states or PUMAs and where they fall in that order. Now that we've seen the maps and data page, let's go to the location comparison tool. The location comparison tool enables users to compare key variables in each domain side by side for 2 selected locations of your choosing. So you can select a state, county, or PUMA. So first, let's select 2 states and compare those side by side. With the state selected, you can see the comparison on variables from work, housing, and community side by side for those selected locations. You can also look within states or compare a state to a county or a PUMA to a PUMA. So let's look here within the state, and we're going to select 2 counties. And I'm going to use a county selector here to show a little bit about how sometimes PUMAs add up to counties or not, depending on the location and how dense the population is there. So you can see here, so for example, in Cook County, Illinois, you see that this county has several smaller PUMAs within that area. It's a very densely populated part of that state. Looking here for Pennsylvania with Crawford County selected, you can see that the smallest we can actually get is this combined PUMA of both Crawford and Warren counties in Pennsylvania. And so some places that are less densely populated, that PUMA will be a combination of counties, and that's the lowest level of geography that we can get. And so when you have those selections, you can see, again, side-by-side comparisons of the different variables within those selections. Anytime that you see these diamonds, these gray diamonds on the economic viability dashboard, those are showing you your state averages. So you can also make that comparison, not just place to place, but also place to state within those areas. So you can make those comparisons as well. The next tab to explore is the Action Planner. Whereas the Maps and Data tool is really focused on the percentages within different groups, this is really looking at the numbers behind those percentages to really help better understand the needs of ALICE households and selected communities with the goal of setting plans for action. This also combines data with some promising practices in these areas to help spur that conversation about how to best act to make a difference for ALICE households. So let's select a state. When you've selected a location, either a state or PUMA, one or multiple PUMAs, you can see different variables related to each of these statements for action. So around, for example, improving job quality, improving education and training opportunities, promoting job opportunities closer to home. So each of these statements are paired with data points that we think are helpful to better understanding that context for ALICE workers and households. You can also scroll below to see promising practices related to those different areas. So for example, addressing benefits cliffs, or exploring how employers can help their employees better meet their basic needs, or looking at industry diversity. For each of these promising practices, there's a description and a link for you to learn more. And it's important to note that these are promising practices that we think have some good potential, but we don't support or endorse any specific strategy or organization linked below. Local stakeholders are best positioned to understand those communities. Let's look at a different domain here, housing, and we'll look at PUMAs within that. So here we'll select multiple PUMAs within the state of Arkansas. You can see the numbers repopulate here. And you see different statements related to housing. So here looking at affordable housing access, focusing on safe and healthy housing. And again, paired with promising practices. We also see this for our community. So looking at childcare and education, food, transportation, healthcare, technology, taxes, and savings and access to credit. Again, with promising practices to help start those conversations around how to best support households and workers in this particular area. This is a really exciting new tool, and we can't wait for you to try it out. Finally, we have our Framework and Variables tab. This tab presents an overview of the Economic Viability Dashboard, our framework, and the variables that are included within each domain. So you can see here using these buttons, the key variable, supporting variables, and contextual variables. For each of the variables, you can see the title, description, source, and an explanation of why this variable is included in the Economic Viability Dashboard. Use the buttons to toggle between the domains. Well, thanks for joining me on this tour. I hope that you'll come to the Economic Viability Dashboard, try it out for yourself, and use it in your work. And if you do, please let us know. Thanks for your partnership on behalf of the United for ALICE team.